Thank you. It is with great honor and privilege to welcome Senator John Barrasso back to the Wyoming Legislature. Prior to being elected to the U.S. Senate, he represented the people of Natrona County in the Wyoming State Senate from 2003 to 2007. He is the third-ranking member in the Senate Republican leadership as chairman of the Senate Republican Conference and is the ranking member of the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee. Please join me in welcoming home United States Senator John Barrasso.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thanks so much for inviting me back to see so many great friends. It goes by so quickly. It's a fascinating thing. I was thinking it was 20 years ago this past week that I got sworn in as a legislator. And 30 years ago, I would sit up there as the doctor of the day. And then I come in here, and there's a whole stack of Cheyenne papers down there, and Charlie Scott's picture is still on the front page. Some things never change. This is where I learned the lessons of how to legislate, the issues of Wyoming. When I would be here, and formerly either Al Simpson, Malcolm Wallop would come, and you'd say, wow. And they'd say, these were the best times being in the Wyoming legislature, and they're true. I mean, it was just great friends, great camaraderie, great opportunities to learn, meet people that you just didn't know and learn things you didn't know. And I just come to bring greetings, don't come to bring advice. Bobby wishes she could be here. We are so grateful for the prayers. Her faith is so strong. We feel the prayers, and we're very, very grateful for all of it. I've had a chance the last 10 days or so to travel the state, visit with people, been to 10 counties, and just kind of share with you what you all know about what a great state this is, what great people we have, and what great resources are here. And I view this job of just fighting every day for the people of Wyoming and the resources that we have in this state. I mean, that is the job in Washington, to go and fight for Wyoming. And we're the only state that has something like the Cowboy Code. Live each day with courage, take pride in your work, do what needs to be done. And we have heroes in every community in this state. People who put their lives on the line every day for the betterment and the safety of others. And they're the firefighters, the EMTs, the paramedics, law enforcement, in addition to the men and women who bear the battle, and we have so many of them. The thing that strikes me in just the last little while, and the governor talked about this in his State of the State address, we lost a couple of folks this past year in December, public servants. One trying to save a drowning man, the other an EMT on I-25, on I-80, stopped at a wreck, an attentive driver, big truck, and he's gone. I had a chance to speak at his services on Sunday in Riverton, and Tyler Harris was his name, left a wife and 3 young sons, 9, 6, and 3. But every community has people like Tyler putting their lives on the line for all of us, and to me, those are heroes. We have remarkable kids in this state. I had a chance in the last week to be at schools in Wheatland and in Hanna, where they opened a Boys and Girls Club, like 200 kids there in this Boys and Girls Club to talk to them, and then at Kemmer to the junior and senior high. And you talk about the opportunities they have in Wyoming that they don't have anyplace else, and that's the Hathaway Scholarship, where every kid, by staying out of trouble and keeping up their grades, every kid can earn a scholarship and go to college and meet their dreams. And that's what you want for the sons and daughters of Wyoming. And the Hathaway Scholarship came about because of a commitment by the legislature working together to say what's in the best interest of our kids as we decided how to invest money in the future. So that works. Had a chance to go to a number of service clubs in Torrington and Riverton. Those are people trying to improve the lives of people in their communities. Been to small businesses in the last 10 days, Torrington, Wheatland, Douglas, Casper, Meeteetse, Thermopolis, You go eat at the Virginian in Medicine Bow and talk to folks there. It was Daylight Donuts in Rollins. Talk to people who are just trying to make a living, keep more of their own hard-earned money, and grow the economy in their communities. These are the people that elected us, that vote for us, and we're here to try to think about their lives and how we can improve their lives. And that's what I always viewed my job at the legislature was, improving the lives of the people of Wyoming. And protecting our resources. I mean, when I talked about economic development with people, when I think economic development, I think about energy-driven economic development. That's the history of the state in so many ways. It's the economy in so many ways. I mean, we have agriculture, we have tourism, and energy. And as a senior Republican on the Energy Committee, I fight every day for Wyoming energy. And we need it all, and we have it all. We need to use it all. So what Cynthia and I have been trying to do is bring back more people from Wyoming to Washington to tell the story about Wyoming energy and the issues. And just in the last year, so we had Pat O'Toole, who's a former member of this body, come back from Savory, Wyoming to talk about the drought. We had Holly Krutka from the University of Wyoming School of Energy Resources, Jeremiah Ryman, who's the County Commissioners Association Executive Director, talk about what's going on with the counties. Glenn Morrell, Executive Director of the Energy Authority. Bill Krapser, the forestry, the Wyoming forester, to talk about issues of healthy forests. Ed Seidel, the president of the University of Wyoming, back to talk about research dollars that go to some big universities and some big states and don't come to places like Wyoming and North Dakota and South Dakota, and ways to do that and help our states. We had Governor Gordon to talk about oil and gas and the regulations that have come out through the Biden administration and the refusal to look out for the permits. We had Jason Beggar who's the managing director of the Integrated Test Center in Gillette, all in an effort to tell the story of Wyoming in Washington. And we also had Jim Willix as the head of the county commissioners from Douglas to talk about infrastructure. Afi Ellis from across the hall came back to testify as well. That's what our focus is, to continue to highlight Wyoming in Washington. And working with Cynthia is a treat. When I was in the state Senate, she was the state treasurer, so we worked closely together then, continue to do that, and we are so happy to have Harriet as a member of the team. She's terrific. I know she spoke here yesterday. You know, as a new member of the House, she's gotten the two key committees that are really important for her experience and for our state. She's on the Judiciary Committee and she's on the Natural Resources Committee. And she has a long history of success in the practice of law and a huge history in terms of our natural resources. So she's perfect in those locations. We are going to be a forceful, effective delegation fighting for the people of Wyoming. And it's a privilege to work with the governor. I mean, you've seen the governor being trusted and tough and tested. And it's more than a campaign slogan because it's true about him. And it's a privilege for all of us to work with him. He calls me regularly, I call him, and we want to be cooperative and helpful from the delegation to the governor and to the legislature in every way that we can. I hope some of you have a chance to come to DC to visit. See, Chip, you were there for a meeting, and Rachel was there, and Jeremy was there as well. Well, they were too busy to see me, which was okay, but you sent your wife and the kids, and Rachel sent Claudia, her mom. So, you get the mom and the spouses and the kids, and we took a wonderful tour. Hopefully they got the pictures from it. I took your kids over when I was doing an interview on Fox, and they asked me something, and I said, well, I have 2 students here from Wheatland, Wyoming. And what we'd have to think about is their future. And we think we're talking about the debt or something, because that's what we need to do, continue to talk. I think they enjoyed it. We actually got a video clip, and they got to see it and send it to them. But we want to help in every way that we can. I told you I wasn't going to have any advice for you, but I'll tell you, when I was leaving the funeral services on Sunday in Riverton, a woman came up to me, and she had recently been elected to the county, to her town council in her hometown. And it wasn't Riverton, it was a different community, but she was there for the services. And she said, do you have any advice for me? And I said, well, when I ran for office, I said I'd do 4 things. I would show up, stand up, speak up, and shut up. I would show up for votes and show up at home on the weekends in Wyoming and travel the state. I would stand up for Wyoming values and our people. And I would speak up for those same people and same values. And then I'd shut up. Because you learn more by listening than by speaking, and that's what I'm going to do right now. So God bless you, and God bless Wyoming, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
On behalf of the Wyoming Legislature, we thank you for your service to Wyoming and the United States Senate.
Committee of the Whole, please come to order. Representative Almond,
Mr. Speaker, privilege of the floor.
go ahead.
I'd like to let you all know I have a constituent here today. He's one of my best friends. I've got several. He's one of them. He's founding member of Liberty's Place for You, as I am. He's a member of the Natrona County Central Committee. Let's give Dan Sabrowski a big hand.
Thank you for being with us today, Dan. And the next bill for our consideration is House Bill 67.
House Bill 67, sponsored by Representative Stivar. Special license plate decals, women veterans, an act relating to motor vehicles. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom was referred House Bill 67, special license plates, decals, women veterans, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Banks, Burkhart, Conrad, Heiner, Knapp, Larson, Lawley, Tarver. Noes, Representative Western. Representative Burkhart, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rise to report, do so with the recommendation that Bill number 67 do pass. There are no standing committee amendments, and I turn the explanation of the bill over to the good sponsor.
Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring you House Bill 67, special license plate decal for women veterans. This was brought to me by a few of my constituents within the veteran community. When I had the bill drafted, it was for a license plate. There was 12 states out there that had the license plate. Talking with some veterans, they would rather see a decal. The decal that'll be placed in the special license plate statute 31-217. The decal is only for the specialty license plates for the military or Purple Heart recipient plates, the DV plate. It just cannot go on a regular license plate, so it'll go in the bottom left corner. The price for the decal is going to be $5 plus the administration fees when they figure out what that's going to be, but it shouldn't be over $10.
And it's a voluntary program. If the veteran wants it, the female veteran wants it, that she can get it. If she doesn't, she doesn't. But there's some female veterans out there that want this on their license plate. 5 years from now, 4 years from now, once we get the number of decals sold, then we can look at getting a license plate. There's so many social license plates out there now that are not being sold. So that's why I went to the decal. Any questions? Vote for the bill. I call for the question.
Question being called. All in favor of HB 67, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. HB 67 has passed the vote. Committee of the Whole. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 96.
House Bill 96, sponsored by Representative Crago. Transfer on death deed insurance coverage, an act relating to insurance and probate. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 1 Judiciary, to whom is referred House Bill 96, transfer on death deed insurance coverage, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Chestick, Crago, Haroldson, Jennings, Nemick, Oakley, Provenza, Washit. Excused, Representative Rodriguez Williams. Representative Washit, Chairman.
Representative Washit, or Chairman Washit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with a recommendation that House Bill 96, as amended, do pass, and I further move the adoption of the Standing Committee amendment. And I turn over explanation of both the amendment and the bill to the sponsor.
Representative Crago.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Body, I bring to you House Bill 96 and ask for your favorable consideration. House Bill 96 is sort of an attempt to protect our beneficiaries of transfer on death deeds here in the state of Wyoming. Several years ago, this body created a legal document, or allowed for the use of a legal document called transfer on death deeds. And a transfer on death deed is when you put in your deed, which encompasses your house, ownership of your home, most likely. It could also be just property without improvements on it, but most likely it's your home. And when you die, that property then is transferred upon your death, immediately upon your death, to the beneficiary listed within that deed. And this bill actually comes from a case out of one of our sister states, wherein a gentleman used one of these transfer on death deeds to give his property, give his home to his niece. And about 3 days after he died, his ex-spouse went in and burned the home down. And so niece goes to insurance company and says, I'm placing a claim on the burnt down house. Insurance company says there is no insurance on the house because it lapsed when the grantor that owned the home died. At that point in time, he no longer had an insurable interest in that home. She was not an additional insured. And from what I could gather, talking to some of the insurance people, she really couldn't be. Most of the time, the agencies are not going to let a beneficiary listed on a transfer on death deed actually be an additional insured. And so that's not really an option to solve the problem. So what we need to do is create a statute that creates that insurable interest by law. And so that's what this is an attempt to do, so that we don't have in our state happen to some poor beneficiary as what happened in one of our sister states. And so it's pretty simple, straightforward. It allows that insurance coverage to last for 60 days, which we heard testimony within the committee that the insurance companies are fine with that. The department that handles regulation of insurance within the state also doesn't see a problem with that, does not create any additional concerns. We did make a few changes to the bill within committee on the standing committee amendment, and we can look at that real quick. One of them was to eliminate some duplicative language on page 3. And if you look at the amendment, that's what that does. And then on page 4, we added a little bit of language upon the request from the insurance folks. And essentially what that does is make sure that it's in regards to the last titled owner. They wanted to make sure that it only requires them to know what's on record within the courthouse. And that's a fair adjustment to the language. And then they also brought up the point, sometimes you can be given something and you don't want it. And so you can disclaim that property. And so they just wanted to make clear that this only goes to those beneficiaries that are not disclaiming the property. And that is the rest of the amendment. And so at this time, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask for a vote on the standing committee amendment.
All in favor of standing committee number 1, please say aye. All opposed, no. Standing committee number 1, the committee of the whole has passed standing committee, or amendment 1. We're back on the bill. Representative Craigo.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so that's pretty much the gist of the bill. I'd be happy to answer any questions the body may have.
The question being called, all those in favor, please say aye. Okay.
All in favor of Chairman Washington's
Okay.
motion when the committee of the whole rise report do so with bill number.
Okay.
Bill number on this one.
It's 96. Okay. Question being called. All those in favor of Representative Waschitz's motion when the committee of the whole rises to report, you do so with the recommendation that the bill do pass. Please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. House Bill 96 has passed the committee of the whole. Our next bill for consideration is House Bill 94.
House Bill 94, sponsored by Representative Rodriguez Williams, Board of Parole, Wyoming Residency, an act relating to criminal procedure. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom is referred House Bill 94, Board of Parole, Wyoming Residency, respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Banks, Burkhart, Conrad, Heiner, Knapp, Larson, Lawley, Tarver, Western. Representative Burkhart, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Burkhart?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rise to report, it do so with a recommendation that House Bill number 94 do pass. There are no standing committee amendments, and I turn the explanation over to the good sponsor.
Representative Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I introduce to you House Bill 94, titled Board of Parole, Wyoming Residency, and I ask for your favorable consideration. Body, this is a simple bill that amends Wyoming State Statute 713-401B and simply inserts a residency requirement. On page 2, line 4, inserts, "No person shall be appointed as a member of the board who has not been a resident of the state of Wyoming for at least 1 year immediately before the person's appointment and shall be a resident throughout the member's term." And I'd stand for any questions.
Chairman Zwanzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I can certainly read the bill, but I'm expecting there would be an explanation of why the reason we would take this one specific board and put requirements on it that we don't have in at least some of our other boards. And I just want to make sure it's not a weird reaction to some interpersonal conflict. So a bit more explanation on why the bill is before us.
Representative Rodriguez Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the good representative from the capital city. I do not bring before the body any specific conflict or complaint that came about the genesis of this bill. However, I do serve on committee number 1 and can tell you when looking at other states' parole board requirements, Wyoming's requirements to serve on the Board of Parole are very minimal compared to those of other states. This is just a simple ad that does exist in other states, and I think it brings us up to speed with other states. It's, yeah, that's it.
Representative Washit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as a matter of common sense, I rise in support of this bill. It would seem to me that if people are making the decision to release offenders from our prison system back into our state, that we would want those people to reside in that state. This is a matter of common sense. Please vote aye.
Representative Conrad.
Chairman Slagle, I resemble that last remark. Having served on the Board of Parole for a number of years and as a vice chairman of that Board of Parole, this is a good bill, and I do stand in support and for this requirement that ensures the recidivism rate is at least, I would say, probably number 1 or 2 in the state. So please support this. Nation.
Representative Yan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a question to the good bringer of the bill. I'm curious, I do like the residency requirement. I think I'll probably vote for it. I'm curious on whether a longer term of residency was considered and how it compares to other states' requirements, if they have longer residency requirements as well.
Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, if you could give us a little background, have there been people appointed to our board that are from out of state? And if so, were there any adverse impacts from that? And also, if we were to do this, kind of building on the last speaker, would there be any other qualifications we might want to include at this time as we're looking at this area of the statute? Thank you.
Representative Conrad.
Chairman Slagle, just a clarifying update. I said recidivism rate at number 1. What I meant by that, just for clarification, is our recidivism rate is the lowest, one of the lowest in the nation. So I want to clarify that. And just to comment based on the last speaker, it is the integrity of those men and women on the Board of Parole that demonstrate their fact-based decision-making that has allowed us to be, or more importantly, have the lowest recidivism rate almost in this nation. So I believe the criteria, the vetting, and the appointment to such boards is working fine, and there's no need to increase that capacity and or requirements or criteria. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the bill? Are we ready for the question? Representative Rodriguez Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to the question from the good representative from District 16, I thought this was a pretty conservative amount of time, that with a minimum 1 year of residency. And just to confirm that, yes, it does, it allows a little bit of integrity in our state statute, and also put some sideboards on the state statute too, so that we can ensure that real Wyoming residents are dealing with Wyoming lives here when it comes to issues of parole. Thank you.
Question being called. All in favor? All in favor of Chairman Washit's motion, Committee of the Whole rise to report, do so the recommendation of House Bill 94 do pass. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, no. House Bill 94 has passed the Committee of the Whole. Next bill for your consideration is House Bill 15.
House Bill 15, sponsored by Judiciary. County authority to dissolve museum boards, clarification, an act relating to counties. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 1 Judiciary, to whom is referred House Bill 15, County authority to dissolve museum boards, clarification, respectfully reports same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chestick, Craigo, Nemec, Oakley, Provenza, Rodriguez-Williams, Washit. Noes, Representatives Haroldson, Jennings. Representative Washit, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Washit?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with a recommendation that House Bill 15 do pass, and I will present the bill. Members, before you have a short bill, what it deals with is the power of a county commission to dissolve boards. A few years ago, we passed statutes that gave an answer to a question that came up in a Wyoming Supreme Court case of whether or not county governments could dissolve boards and commissions that they had established. And the Supreme Court in that case said that they can't because there was no statutory authority for doing so. So we passed a statute a couple years ago that gave county commissions the authority to dissolve boards and commissions that they had created. That created a bit of a problem when it came to one specific type of board, and that being museum boards. Museum boards are really unlike most other county-created boards and commissions. The museum boards frequently accept donations of historical artifacts and items from families in the community, sometimes with caveats about how those items might be maintained or displayed and so forth. They also receive some of these artifacts by loans from people who live in those communities. And so a county museum board has a lot of stuff that other county boards and commissions simply do not have. And so this bill is designed to make it clear that the county commissions do not have the authority to dissolve museum boards. And so the question came up, well, what if you really wanted to do away with the museum board? And I said, well, I don't foresee that happening, but should it, you can always come to us and we'll address it when the need arises. But it's going to be a very complex matter of trying to properly address the dissolution of a board that holds great quantities of artifacts and documents and personal items that have come into the board's possession. So what this does is separate out museum boards from all the other boards that were included in the legislation that we passed on dissolution of county boards. And so please vote aye.
Representative Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I was one of the 2 no votes, and the heartburn that I gave, just so that people all know, was that counties created these boards. And so there's a mechanism to create something that's going to cost the taxpayers money many times. And well, I'm not necessarily have horrible heartburn that it might not be the county commissioners, but there is no mechanism. And if we pass this, there is no mechanism at all for ever getting rid of that. So maybe there needs to be some fine tuning. Maybe there needs to be something in there that says they're going to donate it all to another entity. But anyway, I have heartburn that we can create something that is a district, but
There's no mechanism at all for that to be dissolved on and against the bill.
Is there, if there is no other discussion, Representative Knapp.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick comment. When we do things like we did last year and gave the commissioners the authority to dissolve boards, it's important because it creates a matter of consistency. And when you start carving out one board, then it's another for different reasons. All boards have assets. And in museums, typically what you want to do is create a contract with anybody donating that is either a reversion contract where that item goes back to the family if the museum did not want the item anymore, or if the family wanted the item back. The other items can be donated to a museum that don't have contracts, but the importance is to create a consistency amongst all boards. The commissioners are the elected officials that represent the community. They appoint boards. We shouldn't have boards that are separate from that. Thank you.
Representative Zwanzer.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so again, if you look through 1810-103 on these so-called boards, they're really not like other boards, because when a county has a museum or historic site, they don't necessarily create a board. In many cases, they're creating trustees for a museum, for artifacts, for a collection of exhibits. And so people bequeath these and say, upon my death, we want the county to memorialize or a museum to memorialize, and it does cost money, depending if it's public or private. But the way that these are created are not necessarily, in many cases, a county creating a museum board and saying, hey, let's have a museum in town. We're going to appoint people and let's go find some stuff. This always operates usually in the other way. The stuff comes in and the county has to say, what do we do with it? And they appoint trustees. So I wouldn't call them board members. And you can read 1810-103. Owning, constructing, or acquiring any museum or collection of exhibits shall appoint a board of trustees for the museum or the collection. So it is specific. This is kind of an odd carve out. I was here when we did it and said it was not the best idea we'd ever done 10 years ago, but now that we have it, we're stuck with it. And I don't think it is proper to have this be dissolved because sometimes it goes to our state parks agency, sometimes it goes into private collections, and these will be really, really difficult to dissolve. And we'll have to face that for another day, but I don't think giving the county commissioners a role to do that automatically is the right way to go. So I would ask you to vote for the bill.
Any other discussion on the bill? Representative Knapp.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And again, some clarification on and against the bill. The commissioners act as the fiduciary. They are the ones that actually fund that board. So it's different if it were a joint powers board or if it were some other board set up separately that has its own financing and its own fiduciary responsibility. All these boards run through the county commissioners as the funding entity, as the elected officials. So that's why it's an appointee versus any type of elected official or trustee. Thank you.
Representative Krigo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to point out that during committee meeting, we had testimony from the association that represents our county commissioners, and they are in favor of this bill.
Representative Jennings.
Tagging on to the last speaker, which was one of the things that gave me pause, was that we like the idea of local control. And so we're going to give local control to create something, but we're not going to put anything in place to dissolve it. And the public deserves to have both sides of that. Local control is fine. I mean, maybe there's somewhere other way to do it, but this bill's not it. This bill's just saying, you can't do it. You can never dissolve it. Well, what if there's complications here that at this point in the game, there could be all kinds of complications and no one can do anything about it. So I would urge a no vote.
Representative Lawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am on and in favor of this bill. I have been through a process in Washakie County. We had a museum that started as the Washakie County Museum, and the county appointed trustees received assets, and we had a beautiful museum. And then we went through a process of sort of disconnecting from the county, and really was just a basic legal process of the transferring of assets to the Washakie Museum in a private ownership that does receive some, from time to time, grants or small amounts of funding from the county, even the city from time to time. But so there are processes to handle the transfer of the assets that don't necessarily require the dissolving of the board, that it becomes sort of defunct or inactive. But I will just say there are processes that exist to do that in a smooth, agreed transaction, and I've been through it, so I'm for the bill.
Question being called. All those. Oh, Chairman Washit. Have final remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to bring this home, again, the association that represents the commissioners endorsed the bill, no objections to it. We can, at some point in the future, do the deep dive and figure out what dissolution legislation might look like for a museum board. But that's really something that's going to take quite a bit of work. And this makes it clear that for the time being, until we do that, that these boards will be established. The commissioners are on board. Please vote aye.
Question being called. All those in favor of Representative Washit's motion that when the committee of the whole rise to report, it do so, and recommendation that bill number 15 do pass. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Chair is in question. All in favor, please rise. Okay. All those opposed, please rise. Okay. Ayes have it, 36-23. House Bill 15 has passed the committee of the whole. Representative Craigo,
Mr. Chairman, privilege of the floor.
please.
Members, I would like to direct your attention to the back of the room, the gallery at the back, and I'd like you to help me welcome and also thank you, our district court clerks, for all their hard work they do on behalf of us. Thank you.
Thank you, clerks, for joining us today. The next bill for our consideration will be House Bill 86. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 86, sponsored by Blockchain, Disclosure of Private Cryptographic Keys, an act relating to digital assets. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred House Bill 86, Disclosure of Private Cryptographic Keys, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Chadwick, Haroldson, Harshman, Knapp, Olson, Ottman, Wiley, Yin. Excused, Representative Newsom. Representative Olson, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Olson?
I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that House Bill 86 do pass. There are no amendments to this bill. And Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'll explain the bill. This bill is not new. It was an interim bill, and it has been worked on. Prior to the interim, it's been worked on through several sessions. So this is a product of, I think, the third time that that we've brought the bill forward, and I think we finally got it to a place where it makes good sense and everyone can agree on it. What this bill does is it prohibits the compelled by a court production of a private cryptographic key that is in relation to a digital asset, a digital identity, or any other interest or right that is digitally represented. So, in order to understand that, I'll have to briefly just describe the private key. What we're talking about is if you have a digital asset, the way that you access it is through a key. When you have a private key, and that's what this bill relates to, think about the private key as a password. It's a password that was a tremendously large password, numerically generated. You didn't generate it, it generated with the when you took possession of the asset, for example. And you can't change that password, ever. And you're the only person in the world that has that password. That's a private key, so that's what we're talking about. So theorists in this area of the law will attest that because of the sacredness of that key, being unable to change it, no other person in the universe has the key, so if you lose it, you can't go and ask somebody else to give you the key. You can't, like, you lose your password to your email, you can put in different passphrases or whatever and get around it and reset it. You can't do any of that here. So what legal theorists hold is that the key itself, if you have control and possession of the key, you actually have control and possession of the asset itself. And that's why this bill seeks to clarify that you cannot compel someone in a criminal or civil or administrative proceeding to turn over their private key, because you're actually compelling them to turn over the asset, even though the order was trying to get access to the asset. So that's what the bill does, and it has one big exception, and this is really important. On page 2, little paragraph B says that this section shall not be interpreted. So the prohibition on the disclosure of a private key shall not be interpreted to prohibit any lawful proceeding to compel a person to produce, sell, transfer, convey, or otherwise disclose the digital asset. So that's really important. So I'll give you one example. Probably one of the biggest examples of where this is going to occur is in a divorce. People have bank accounts, they have a house, they have cars, and then they have some Bitcoin. And they're going through the divorce, and one of the things that they have to do is file what's called a Rule 26 disclosure. So the Rules of Civil Procedure, Rule number 26, requires you to disclose all of your assets and all of your debts to each other, so that when you get in front of the court at some point, there can be a lawful division or an equitable division of these assets. Nothing in this bill protects a person from following that rule. They still are required to disclose all of the Bitcoin they have. We're just saying you can't demand that they turn over the password. Get to the end of the divorce, you can still award all of the Bitcoin to the opposite side, to the spouse, and require the transfer of it. This bill doesn't protect that, just the password itself. Because if the court were to take possession of the password, it would in essence be in control of the asset. If the third party was to take control of the password, it would be in control of the asset. And that's it. That's all this bill does. And I would certainly take any questions.
Representative Washit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question on, is there any place else in the statute where we put an absolute bar on the court that they can never, ever, ever access information that might be pertinent to the proceedings before that court?
Representative Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really got to clarify, based on the question was, is there anywhere in law that prohibits disclosure of information? Again, this bill does not prohibit that. You still would have to disclose the 52 Bitcoin that you have, the 37 Ethereum that you have, and the value of them. You just don't have to give the password to access them. And the answer to the question is, to my knowledge, I don't know. I wish I knew every law in the Green Book, but I unfortunately do not.
Representative Washit, follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my question would then be, if the party is required to disclose all the assets, how do we know that all of those assets have been disclosed?
Representative Olson.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the Rule 26 requires an actual affidavit, a sworn affidavit. So when you disclose that information, again, going back to the example of the divorce, you list what your bank accounts are, you say what the balance is, and you sign it swearing under oath that that's what it is. In the discovery process, if the opposing counsel was to say, I don't know if you have $1,000 in that bank account, or maybe you have $10,000 in the bank account, I want the bank statements. So they can demand disclosure of the bank statements. Nothing in this bill would prohibit a court from actually demanding to see what's behind the key. It could require, for example, an in-camera review where cryptographers come into the room, or just attorneys and parties come in the room, put in the key, display what's on the screen, something similar to that. Nothing prohibits a typical process that would occur to disclose assets. And again, the affidavit is really encompassing about 90% of legal process where I'm disclosing what my assets are. It's very common that I'll say what I have in a bank account, but you don't go to the bank and physically inspect the bank to search to see if the dollars are there. You simply just look at a printout of a statement that shows it. Same thing could be done here. I could go to my wallet that holds my currency. I could do a printout of all of my currencies that I have, their values, and the amount of coins that I have, just like I would with my bank account.
Representative Hornock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question along those lines, and it's somewhat answered, but what about in the case of criminal type of proceedings where there's an investigation, things need to be disclosed, and then I don't know if, sorry, I'm not the attorney type, so I don't know all the proper lingo, but in the case where there is where they take the assets, or the state or something can take those assets because they were used in a criminal matter. Is there anything along those lines? Thanks.
Representative Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my question is on page 2, lines 15 and 16, and then going back to subsection A, where it says, except as otherwise required by subsection A. But when you go back to A, it says you can't compel anyone in a civil, criminal, or administrative, legislative. So if I could get a little more clarification to what that lines 15 and 16 is referring to.
Representative Obum,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question for the bringer. I'm just curious if there's any comparability here to, say, like a safe, the combination to a safe. Is that a comparable kind of idea where with the key you can open up the key to your wallet or to some other company that's holding that wallet to see what's in it, but you don't actually have to give them the combination? Is that a fair comparison?
Representative Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just really love the good CPA from the center of the state, because that is a brilliant and perfect explanation. If in the case I had, and this could actually just be in something as simple as a probate where there's a safe discovered and everybody wants to know what's in it. The password to the safe isn't distributed. The personal representative has a fiduciary obligation to keep that password and not give it to the other potential heirs. But what would most likely occur is a gathering of everybody around the safe, and the personal representative would punch in the code and open the safe, and everyone would get to inspect the inside of it at the same time. There's nothing that would prohibit that from, that would be a very common process that I think would happen with a private key here as well. You wouldn't hand over the password to it. You would just open it up and everyone could see what is there. That's what I was trying to reference when I said an in-camera review earlier, but the safe example, very, very good example. Thank you for that.
Any other discussion on this bill? The question being called, all in favor of Representative Olson's motion that when the committee of the whole rise, it do pass the recommendation that bill number 86 do pass. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The House Bill 86 has passed the committee of the whole. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 10. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 10, sponsored by Judiciary, County Officers, Bond Amounts, and Surety Requirement, an act relating to county officers. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred House Bill 10, County Officers, Bond Amounts, and Surety Requirement, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Chestick, Crago, Haroldson, Jennings, Nemec, Oakley, Provenza, Rodriguez-Williams, Washit. Representative Washit, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Chairman Washit?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with recommendations that House Bill 10 do pass, and I further move the adoption of the Standing Committee amendment. And with your approval, I will present the bill.
Go ahead, Chairman Washit.
Thank you. Members, to bring you House Bill 10. What this case involves, what this bill involves is some work of the Interim Judiciary Committee to look at a case that happened a few years ago in one of our smaller counties where a clerk of district court embezzled over $125,000 and ultimately pled guilty to the crime. In that case, it became apparent that the bond that clerk had to post upon assumption of that office was inadequate to cover the loss, okay? And so the Interim Judiciary Committee started looking at this issue and realized very quickly that many of these bond amounts and some of the language referring to two sureties and so forth contained in the bond statutes had not been increased in some cases since statehood, okay? I mean, dating way back. So what we tried to do in this bill was update the amounts of the bonds that would be posted by our various clerks. And then we said, well, what about the other county officers? So we expanded it to a look at the other county officials, and we increased bonds for those positions. So if you go through the bill, you'll see that on the bottom of page 1, lines 14 and 15, we talk about the clerk, and we raise that bond to $100,000. And then when we look at the other officials in the on page 2 and beyond in the bill, it brings us to the Standing Committee amendment. And the Standing Committee heard testimony that not all of these county officials present the same risk. They have different amounts of access to cash and less likelihood of embezzlement for example, county commissioners or the county surveyor. So for all of those positions, we recommended an increase in the bond to $10,000. And for those officials that have access to greater sums of cash, such as the county coroner or the sheriff or the assessor, our county clerk, we recommended that those bonds be increased to $100,000. So the amendment specifically addresses the county commissioners and the county surveyor, and takes out the placeholder amount that the committee had put in at the end of the interim, and replace that with the $10,000 amounts for surveyor and commissioners. And with that, I'll stand for questions and call for the vote, if there are none, for the Standing Committee Amendment number 1.
The question being called, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Standing Committee Amendment number 1 has been adopted. We are back on the bail.
I'll stand for questions on the bill. If there's none, I'll ask for a question.
The question being called, all those in favor of Representative Waschitz's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Bill number 10 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? House Bill 10 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is, Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're going to do a little reassignment here on the order. Next bill after 43 will be House Bill 51, and then House Bill 81. We have got a 4 o'clock Rules Committee meeting, and so I'm not wanting to try to cram a lot of bigger stuff in before we have to adjourn anyway. So House Bill 43, and then we'll go to 51, and then 81 if there is time.
Okay. So the first bill, or the next bill for our consideration is House Bill 51. The reading clerk will read the bill. 43.
House Bill 43, sponsored by Transportation, Winter Road Closures, an act relating to highways. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 9, Minerals, Business and Economic Development, to whom was referred House Bill 43, Winter Road Closures, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Burkhart, Conrad, Heiner, Knapp, Larson, Lawley. Noes, Representatives Banks, Tarver, Western. Representative Burkhart, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Burkhart?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with a recommendation that House Bill 43 do pass. There is a standing committee amendment, and I turn the explanation of the bill and the standing committee amendment over to the good Chairman of Transportation.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, pretty simple bill in general here. This was a bill that was worked during interim and had a lot of discussion, but I want to give you the genesis of why this bill basically came in. And what it ultimately starts out with is if you go to page 1 of the bill, we strike the word willfully. And when we strike the word willfully, the reason we're doing that is because you cannot prove intent in the court of law. And so what this is ultimately doing is we're talking about road closures. And so if we have a gate that closes down I-80 and somebody goes around that, we cannot prove that the intent of why they went around that. So that willfully becomes a major issue when any type of prosecuting attorney is looking at trying to charge these cases. And so during the interim, as you look at the bill, you can go down to page 2 and you can see quite a bit of language here. But that language ultimately got stricken during the committee, and I appreciate the good chairman of Minerals hearing this bill, because after having 11 standing committee bills coming out of the Transportation Committee, I felt it was only fair that he handle some of the bills that he brought forward. So, but ultimately what happens, and we'll go into the amendment as we're looking at this, is you see how much of this we ultimately strike on the amendment on line 11 and 12 is we insert reinsert all stricken language. So we go back to the original bill. And then right above that, we say, we strike the words fail and observe to disobeys and disregards. This is a much easier proof of law. When they go into to prosecute this, they are able to prosecute this issue much easier when they have a disobey or disregards. And this is actually what they're prosecuting right now. So this is simply a bill to help our highway patrol from a situation that if the gate comes down and somebody runs around that gate and they put somebody else at risk because they decided to just run this gate, we can charge them with the crime. We have closed the interstate for a reason. It's for their own safety, their own good, and also for the safeties of our highway maintenance workers and or the snowplow drivers, whatever the case may be. So, Mr. Chairman, I see a couple people standing up at the mic, so I'll stand for questions.
Okay, Representative Provenza.
Good work. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to ask a question about what in the state of emergency. So if somebody's in emergency, can they go around? Are they going to be looking at any penalties for that? And just for the fun of anybody who's been here in the previous years, I'm wondering if maybe willfully was considered with knowingly, like maybe we need to put the word knowingly in there. Just thought that'd be a good question for the committee.
Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also have a question. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I've been told that we're allowed to show our legislative badge when a road is closed and then go ahead. Does that mean that we have a conflict of interest in voting for this bill? Or it does seem odd that we would vote for a bill that doesn't apply to us.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So to answer the last question first, that's not actually just something that is given and afforded to legislators. So no, you don't have a conflict of interest here. What you have is a program, and that program does allow for certain individuals to apply to the Department of Transportation. Think of individuals who live over in Laramie and commute over to Cheyenne, and they have their doctors over here, something along those lines. They can actually apply to the Department of Transportation for the same privileges that we can get in order to cross a closed gate. So no conflict of interest or anything along those lines, and nothing to worry about in the fact that we would be putting something for us and not others. It's a program that can go on to this. This is simply looking at how we prosecute those who run this barrier and go out. And so to the second question, I was not around in the Minerals Committee when knowingly and willfully was discussed, but it was discussed during the interim. This was the recommendation brought forward by the Department of Transportation. And again, I appreciate that question. It looks like I do have some more questions coming forward, and even an attorney at the mic. So,
Representative Hornock.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So I would like a little bit more clarification on the taking out the willfully, especially since last night I may or may not have done this. But I may or may not have made it home because I'm wearing the same clothes that I did yesterday. So anyway, I would like a little more clarification on this, especially in those emergency situations, because there are people that need to get home to, I mean, even feed cows or do something like that. So, I'm a little hesitant to throw out that language that may give a little bit of leeway for the courts and for that jurisdiction. Thanks.
Representative Washut.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know that there's much protection if you drive around the gate. I think you have willfully, with or without the word, you have gone past the gate. But my concern is, I know the danger, right? People run these gates, then they have crashes or they slide off the road, and other people have to go to their rescue in horrible weather conditions that could have been completely avoided had the people simply honored the fact that the gate was down. But what I worry about is someone who might enter that roadway at some point beyond the gate. They come off of a ranch road and they turn onto that highway, and the gate's down, but the gate's down 10 miles behind them. They don't see the gate. Now they're traveling on a roadway that's closed. Will they be subject to this fairly large and significant fine, even though they didn't drive past a gate? They didn't know there was a gate. They entered the highway at some later point.
Representative Stiff.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. 2 points. I'd echo the comments of the previous speaker and clarify that in our criminal code, we can and do put in intent elements into crimes. It's quite common to put in an element that you did something knowingly or willfully or with reckless disregard. So, and then becomes the burden of proof on the government, on the prosecutor, to show that you acted with that intent. So I don't, there's nothing particularly special. There's nothing, and crimes that don't require any guilty mind are disfavored, typically. Those are status offenses. We have those, but those tend to be disfavored. And the second point is that there's a constitutional issue here for legislators who are on their way to the Capitol for their legislative duties, that the executive, because of separation of powers, that the executive branch should not be able to interfere with the conduct of the legislature. And that's the theory that supports why it is okay to, as legislators may have done, traveling from the southwest part of the state to the state capitol, to pull off the interstate exit, have a talk with the trooper, have the trooper show the badge, have the trooper look at some of us and say, stupid is as stupid does, and if you want to do it, go ahead. So my question then is, are we creating potentially either, criminal liability for ourselves? Thank you.
Representative Conrad.
Chairman Slagle, we debated this issue fairly extensively in the Minerals Committee. And I just do want to share with you one of the areas that I think some of us may or may not be aware of. For over 20 years, I've used a program called the Wyoming Travel Authorization Program. It's called YTAP. You simply apply for those areas that you travel on, whether it's for necessity to, say, feed cows, go to work, et cetera, so forth. That application, which is all electronic, gets sent to the Highway Patrol, and they in turn send you back an authorization, and you can click specifically where your routes of travel are, I-80, I-25, whatever the cases may be. And what that allows you is when those roads are closed, and or if there is a sheriff there, or more importantly, a highway patrolman, you share with him your YTAP number, and he allows you to go through to allow you to feed those cows or go do the necessary obligations that you have. So in consideration of this bill, which I stand on and for, I just encourage you guys to take advantage of whether you vote in favor or not in favor of this bill, to utilize what's called YTAP. It's free to all of us, irregardless if you're a legislator or not, that allows you to travel whenever you need to, specifically based on your respective demands, whether that's work and or home or commercial. So thank you.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have this issue over there in our country quite often. The road will be closed north up there at I-80, and we will have men out there in the field working, and they'll close the gate. Well, we need to get to those men because they're at risk out there without fuel and things like that. So I see this as not a one-size-fits-all. There's special circumstances for all these things.
Representative Brown.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. So want to kind of bring us back for a second. It's still illegal to cross this gate right now. We're not making this a new law. So I want that to be very, very, very clear that it is currently illegal. What we're doing is we're changing the word willfully. And in the amendment, as you look at this, and we're going to say, instead of instead of going through the stricken language that we have here, that they're disobeying or disregarding the signs that are placed on the interstate. So to the good representative from the center part of the state, there's a good potential that you could be in an area where you take an exit, you take a nap, you wake up, the road's closed, you come up on the interstate, but those gate crossings are 30 miles in either direction of you. The trooper pulls you over. Well, they also have discretion, ladies and gentlemen. Troopers and sheriffs and everybody else, they have discretion. This is not an opportunity for them to sit there and say, we're going to force this on the book. We have to do this. This is simply giving the authority for those who choose to drive around and the cops can watch this happen, that we can charge them with the crime and it can be prosecuted. Because currently what is occurring right now is the prosecution is struggling to prove the intent if they do not have it on camera or something else along those lines. It is harder to prove the intent portion of this process. So to the good defense lawyer who brought this question up, I appreciate it, but ultimately what it boils down to is the availability of proving that is a lot harder in this when it's a criminal action versus, let's say, murder. Okay, I think we're talking about two totally different forms of criminal action here. So yes, we are taking the fine up. What we're doing is we're putting anybody who does this and those who may or may not have done this last night, you're potentially putting not only yourself at danger, but you're also putting the trooper that has to come out if you slide off the road, that has to come out and try to rescue you. Then you put the plow drivers at risk if you're out there. Those are just the people that they're trying to do their jobs, and we're trying to do this safely. But if we can't do it safely and effectively because people are driving around these gates with complete disregard for what the law says, then why do we have a law in the books? So, Mr. Chairman, it looks like I've got nobody else up there. Oh, I do, another attorney. Fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In response to the previous speaker, I can tell you that there are hundreds of laws where law enforcement has to prove intent. And the idea that you make this special, frankly, makes this a special crime, unique, and so on and against. But I may have to declare a conflict on this issue.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Representatives Yin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think the safety aspect is definitely the priority concern, but I'm curious on whether there is economic impact of an extended road closure if someone goes around the gates and crashes and then they have to clean up the crash. And does it cause longer road closures by people disobeying this law?
Representative Brown.
Yes.
Okay, question on the amendment. Having been called, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Chair's in doubt. Okay. All those in favor stand. Okay. Please stand still while they're counting. Those opposed, please stand. Standing Committee Amendment number 1 has passed 40 to 18. We are back on the bill. Question being called. All those in favor of Representative Chairman Burkhart's motion, when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, do recommend that bill number 43 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. If HB 43 has having failed a standing division vote, roll call vote is required. The chief clerk will call roll. Having failed a voice vote, a standing division vote is required. All those in favor, please stand. Those opposed, please stand. More than 32. Having standing division fail. Pursuant to House Rule 6-6B, House Bill 43, having failed the roll call vote, is indefinitely postponed. Oh, excuse me. A roll call vote is required. Would the chief clerk please call the roll?
Allemand? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Klauston? Aye. Conrad? Aye. Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom excused. Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storr? Strzok? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washit? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Swanser Dan? Swanser Dave? Speaker Summers? Are there any changes? Davis? Oh, sorry. Davis, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 23 aye, 38 no, 1 excused.
House,
By the vote indicated.
House Bill 43 has passed the committee of the whole. Has not passed, excuse me, has not. House Bill 43 has not passed the committee of the whole and is indefinitely postponed. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee of the whole rise and report.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor of the Majority Floor Leader's motion. The reading, no. All those, yeah. You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? The motion carries.
The reading clerk will read the committee of the whole report.
Mr. Speaker, your committee of the whole, having had under consideration bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. House Bill 65, do pass. Beg leave to sit again at 2:15. House Bill 67, do pass. House Bill 96, do pass amended. House Bill 94, do pass. House Bill 15, do pass. House Bill 86, do pass. House Bill 43 failed to pass committee of the whole and was indefinitely postponed. Representative Slagle, Chairman.
I move the adoption of the committee of the whole report.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion carries. Congratulations, Representative Slagle. Awesome. All right, do we have any reports from standing committees? Any messages from the Senate? Reports from standing committees.
House Bill 21, sponsored by Agriculture, State Land, Use of Land Qualification Requirements, an act relating to state lands. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom was referred House Bill 21, State Land Use of Land Qualification Requirements, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Hellerman, Allred, Banks, Conrad, Crago, Davis, Eklund, Slagle, Winter. Representative Eklund, Chairman. House Bill 80, sponsored by Revenue, Medical Treatment Opportunity Act, Medicaid Reform, an act relating to Medicaid. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 3, Revenue, to whom was referred House Bill 80, Medical Treatment Opportunity Act, Medicaid Reform, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Byron, Harshman, Northrup, Oakley, Storer, Swonitzer. Noes, Representatives Bear, Locke, Strzok. Representative Harshman, Chairman.
Re-referrals. I believe, is 80, was it a revenue bill? I don't have it in front of me, so Vice Chair Oakley, you will have to, no? I just have a slip, says House Bill 80 re-referral, so. Okay. House Bill 19, what committee was that out of? I don't know, I have a House Bill 19 referral sitting there. Okay, we'll do messages from the Senate and hunt up House Bill 19 first. Do you have a privilege of the floor? Let's wait till after messages from the Senate. Thank you.
Message 140. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below failed to pass the Senate third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 3, Retail Liquor License Fees, ayes 14, noes 14, conflict 3. Message 141. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 39, Board of Equalization, questions before the board, ayes 31. Message 142. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 75, Decentralized Autonomous Organizations Amendments, ayes 31. Message 143. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 83, K-12 School Facility Leasing, ayes 31. Message 144. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 84, Education Model Student Attendance Policies, ayes 31. Message 145. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 88, Hunting Licenses Weighted Bonus Points System, ayes 28, noes 3. Message 146. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 99, Witnessing of Wills, Remote Methods, ayes 31. Message 147. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 21, High Occupancy Vehicle Lanes, ayes 18, noes 13. Message 149. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 56, Prohibiting Travel Across Private Land for Hunting Purposes, ayes 25, noes 6. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
Representative Berger, do you have a privilege of the floor?
Mr. Speaker, yes, privilege of the floor.
Please.
I'd like to recognize some distinguished men up there, County Commissioner, Uintah County Commissioner Eric South, and Uintah County Commissioner Mark Anderson.
Hey!
Hey!
Well, welcome to the House. Representative Conrad,
Mr.
privilege,
Speaker, privilege of the floor.
please.
I'd like to take this opportunity as well and recognize our UNT County group, specifically our county clerk, Amanda Hutchison, and her first deputy and of elections, Kim Goebel. Fantastic job for our free and fair elections.
Hey! Welcome to the House. We really appreciate all the hard work all the county commissioners do around the state of Wyoming in running our local government. And obviously, we know those county clerks help run those county commissions and our elections and do a wonderful job. So thank you, clerks, as well. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll give you the preliminary list for tomorrow. Before we adjourn, House Bill 2, House Bill 51, House Bill 81, House Bill 93, House Bill 19, House Bill 24, and then we will have others as amended. House Bill 2, repeat again, House Bill 2, House Bill 51, House Bill 81, House Bill 93, House Bill 19, and House Bill 24.
All right, thank you. Committee announcements? Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 9 will meet tomorrow morning, Friday the 20th, at 7:30 for a brief presentation from the Wyoming Mining Association. And at 8 o'clock, we'll take up House Bill 136, Capital Construction Amendments, House Bill 153, Workers' Compensation Competitive Coverage, and House Bill 159, Department of Fire Protection and Electrical Safety Fees.
And before we continue with this, I'm going to take a privilege up there in the gallery are 3 Sublette County Commissioners, Tom Noble there on the left, and Mac Bradley, a newly elected county commissioner, in the middle, and Sam White on the right. And they're pretty good hands, so thanks for coming down and visiting with us. Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, will meet tomorrow at 8 a.m. in House Conference Room 3 to hear the following 3 bills. House Bill 66, prohibiting mask, vaccine, and testing discrimination. House Bill 82, defendant mental illness examinations. And House Bill 149, protection of healthcare workers.
Chairman Olson.
Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, will meet tomorrow, Friday, the 20th, in room E005 to further consider continuation from 118, House Bill 49, Municipal Nonpartisan Rank Choice Elections, and to hear 2 additional bills, House Bill 134, Alcohol Sales to Licensees, and House Bill 142, Notice of Annexation. Thank you.
Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your House Appropriations will meet at 9 a.m. in the Appropriations Room. We will hear House Bill 46, 148, 2 draft constitutional amendments, one for the Permanent Mental Trust Fund Investment and Distribution Funds, and one for the Common Schools Investment and Distribution Funds, and then re-referrals 74 and 34.
Chairman Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 4 will hear 2 bills at noon recess tomorrow. House Bill 32, House Bill 70. House Bill 70 is definition for home-based education programs, and 32 is education mill levy amendments.
Chairman Washut.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 1, Judiciary, will meet tomorrow morning at 7:30 in Meeting Room 1 to hear 3 bills, House Bill 78, House Bill 90, and House Bill 112.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Your House Rules Committee will be meeting in the Supreme Court room at 4 p.m. immediately after, well, right now.
You have heard the majority floor leader's motion. All those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, motion carries. The House is adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow, January 20th, 2023.